Okay, quick music disclaimer here. I do not own the rights to this music, which belongs to the rightful owner, who is the intoxicating mind of Dr. Frankenstein. So he made my intro and my outro, and I hope you guys enjoy. Check them out on Spotify and YouTube, and no copyright infringement is intended. Have a good day.
What happened was I knocked her unconscious with a crowbar.
Where'd you have that?
By the car. And then there was some handcuffs there along with the crowbar. And I handcuffed her and put her in the the passenger side of the car and drove away. And she was she was unconscious, but she was very much alive.
A clear choice of good versus evil, of right versus wrong.
Twisted Tales.
All right, welcome back to Twisted Tales, folks. So we're gonna continue on with our Ted Bundy shit here, and we'll go from there. And Stephanie's gonna join me on this one here, so say hello.
Hey guys.
See, look at that enthusiasm. All right, yeah. So I believe we were finishing off with we did our couple victims there, or whatever, and we're gonna continue on with a few more of his victims here from Washington. So the next victim here of Ted Bundy's wrath was Susan Elaine Rancourt. So she was last seen on April 17th, 1974, and she was 18 years old at the time here. So she went missing from Ellensburg, Washington, which is located about 2 hours east of Seattle. So this is off Interstate 90. And this is a city with a population of a little over 18,700. So Susan disappeared after attending an evening advisors meeting. This is at the Central Washington State, and this was around the 10 p.m. mark. So the meeting in question, this was for college students who were interested in becoming resident advisors. Now, Rancourt was known to be a little bit shy, but she thought taking on this kind of role here, she was hoping to kind of be a little bit more outgoing, maybe break out of her shell a little bit. When she didn't come back from her Bardo Hall room after the meeting at Munson Hall, Rancourt's roommate, her name was Diane Pitt, she notified campus police at about 3 a.m. because she was worried that she didn't come back. Now, campus police then put up a missing persons flyer all over campus here. So then they notified Rancourt's parents, and they were living up in Anchorage, Alaska at the time. And obviously, they did what parents always do, right? They're worried. They came ASAP, and they knew that their loving daughter didn't actually leave on her own accord. So they knew something was kind of fishy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine that you get that phone call, right?
It'd be a nightmare.
Yeah, no, it'd definitely be a fucking nightmare. Now, her father, Dale Rancourt, he later said in a couple interviews and stuff, "We believe Susan was abducted because she was always a very logical and predictable person. Very predictable." And he said, "If it was one of my other children, I'd say, just stand by. They'll be back in 2 or 3 days. But not Susan. She was always very careful." So let's go into a little bit of detail about who Susan was. So she was born October 12th, 1955 in La Conner. This is the town in Skagit County, Washington, United States. So they have a population of 965 people, so it's not really a big spot, but a spot nonetheless.
Yeah.
Now, she was the daughter of Dale Theodore Rancourt and Vivian Elaine Whitman Winters. Now, her father was born November 2nd, 1931, up in Everett, Snohomish, Washington. And unfortunately, he passed August 15th of 1990 at the age of 58 up in Skagit, Washington. And her mother, Vivian, was born in 1932 up in Washington, United States. And she passed July 31st, 2016. She was 84, and she passed in Washington, United States. So together, throughout their lives, they had 6 children, including Susan. There were 3 sisters, Stacy Dale Rancourt, Sandra Rancourt, and Judy Rancourt. And then she had 2 brothers. There was Dennis Rancourt and Thomas Dale Rancourt. So the couple married back on February 3rd of 1950. Susan was 5'2" and about 104 pounds. She was described by her mother as a very loving person, very bubbly, just your average bookworm. So that means like a person who's devoted to reading. Now, in her school days, she ended up being a cheerleader later on, and then she had exceptionally good grades throughout school. So she was a homecoming queen. She was known by everyone for her sensible ways and her wholesomeness.
Now, her family actually nicknamed her Prudence Pureheart because of this. And also, it's a little known fact, she was also known for always brushing and flossing her teeth. So, after she had expensive dental work done, including a gold cap and bridge, I guess that became her focus. Now, her mom mentioned when she'd clean her room that she'd move her bed to clean under it, and she had every school paper from kindergarten tucked under her bed in like neat little piles. She kind of referred to it as, I guess, a series. That was her life, going to school, going to college. That was just her element. Now, Rancourt came to the college to study biology as part of the pre-med program at the college Central Washington State College. It's now known as CWU, or Central Washington University. She had plans to attend medical school after undergrad. She was a tutor in German and science classes for other students that attended the school. She was also an avid baker. She maintained a 4.0 grade average, and she worked 2 full-time jobs just to pay her tuition the previous summer. Now, she also worked at a nursing home, and she sewed patches on uniforms for like campus police officers, and she even went like running with them after class. At the time, the young college student was preparing for her midterm finals, and to those who knew her, Susan was a very studious young girl who never skipped classes. When her parents arrived, they checked out her dorm room. This was Bartow Hall, a dormitory named after the school's former register, Harold Peter, or Pete Bartow. This guy taught history, retiring in 1961, and he enjoyed life with his wife Martha until his death in 1963.
So after this guy's death, CWU built a 3-story dormitory, and they named it after him. And the whole thing like fit like 174 beds, I believe. So back to it. Now, first thing the parents noticed was that her dental floss was left behind in her room. And with her dental habits and everything, right, she would not have left that behind. Because if she was stepping out or anything, right, she'd always have some with her. She always took that stuff everywhere. Now, the family was put up into the dorms, and they were comped by the campus, so they had meal tickets and everything like that. They were well looked after. Shortly after the search was conducted, and this would involve, I believe, some 200 volunteers, they searched a 62 square mile area. And that's a lot of area, folks. That equals like over 39,680 acres. So, I mean, they did what they could, right? So search teams were brought in from all over the place. There was King, Pierce, and Kittitas counties. and as well as Cleum, Thorpe, and Ellensburg. So they checked all the searching trails that were around all the rural areas. They even checked through this old irrigation channel that ran through the campus. And eventually local Boy Scouts got word of the disappearance, so they later joined up in the search in an effort to find her. Susan's family flew a private airplane over the whole area just in hopes that they might spot her very distinctive yellow jacket from high up above. But unfortunately, nothing came from it. On May 4th, search efforts were called off, but the campus police chief, his name was Al Pickles, so he vowed to keep the case open. And the only thing that police knew what was going on was all these women had started to go missing, right? They only knew like the date and the time that they went missing, so they didn't know how this was happening. Although the police were just quick to retrace Susan's steps and everything, they interviewed multiple people. They put out an all-points bulletin, and they were unable to find out any trace of the missing co-ed. Now, according to the dean of students, this dude's name was Robert Miller. So he was kind of pissed off that campus security didn't have like a shred of evidence about what happened to her. The whole thing started after that meeting. Now, Susan had began walking back to her dorm room at Bartow Hall. She had left some clothes in the washer, and she had plans to join a friend to see a movie. She was doing all this German tutoring and stuff there, so they wanted to go back and see this German movie. So as she was walking, she encountered a man in his mid-20s who was having some sort of difficulty carrying like a stack of books. Now, he said he had this apparent like injury and all that, right? So he had a sling, and he wore that on his arm. So obviously Susan being Susan, like totally nice and everything, like, hey, I'll help you, right? Susan offered up her assistance. And the reason being, like, this guy was just totally polite. He was very clean cut. You know, just fucking one of the guys, right? Like, oh, this guy's a college student. I'll give him a hand, right? So afterwards, he said, like, hey, can you help me walk over to my car and whatever, right? And then the two of them began making their way through the parking lot. So the stranger's car was parked near a railroad trestle in a deserted area of the parking lot. Now, this was evening time by this time. So back in 1974, the railroad trestle in this area had been one of the most darkest locations on campus. So Rancourt picked up Bundy's books, and she agreed to carry them back to his car, and he led her up North Chestnut Street. So as soon as she leaned over to put the books into his car, the stranger fucking bludgeoned her unconscious with the concealed like crowbar, tire iron, I believe. And then he ended up getting her quickly into the vehicle, and he drove off with her. And this would be the last time anyone on campus reported seeing her alive.
Earlier that day, Bundy had strategically parked his Volkswagen Bug in a poorly lit area that was roughly 150 yards northeast of Bullion Library. He then put on the fake sling, grabbed a stack of books, and he began hanging around the campus. During the police investigation, 2 other students at Central Washington State reported being approached by a stranger that very night. He introduced himself as Ted, and he was wearing the sling on his arm. Now, these 2 were careful. One would be victim Jane Curtis, who sensed something was off when they approached Bundy's car, the Volkswagen Beetle, and noticed that the front passenger seat was missing. She set the books down on his car, and she got out of there quickly. Now, Curtis mentioned he wore a woolen hat and shabby clothes, no glasses. The other, Catherine Clara, she decided to leave when Bundy apparently dropped his keys in the dark parking lot and started fumbling for them. He then asked the young lady to help him look for them. She set the books down, and she also took off. Now, Catherine stated that Bundy had worn glasses and that he was very well dressed. But if Rancourt was his only option, after having lost 2 potential victims that night already, He may have entered like a frenzy state and was just totally ticked off by this point. How would Susan have known that he was a hardcore creep or like a rapist murderer? So this would mean Bundy tried to disguise himself in case there were any other witnesses around, so that accounts of him would be different or it would contradict it, that there would be no reliable sketch or profile of him that could be established. Now, it's human nature to want to help people in need, but sometimes it can get you into trouble. Now, her mother made mention in an interview that during the investigation, both her and her husband Dale were sobbing, and Vivian said, "I'll never see her again." As more women went missing throughout the Pacific Northwest, police agencies tried to find a common link in the cases. Unlike Bundy's other victims, Rancourt had blonde hair and blue eyes. By May of 1974, both the authorities and the media, they were starting to notice a worrying trend. The victims were young college students between the ages of 18 and 21, and all of these women had disappeared from college campuses that were close to the highway. On July 3rd, 1974, representatives from multiple law enforcement authorities in Washington state area met to discuss the cases. Although they had no proof that a crime had taken place, they found it worrying that so many young women were going missing. The only thing linking the disappearances together was the complete lack of evidence in each case. Nearly 1 year later, her skull was discovered in a forested area on Taylor Mountain. According to Keppel, he knew almost immediately that it belonged to Susan. Unlike the other victims, she had all of that dental work done on her teeth. Shortly afterwards, the police formally identified her skull using dental records.
And the next victim on Bundy's list was Roberta Kathleen Parks. Actually, she was nicknamed Kathy by some of her family and friends. She was born February 27, 1954, in Lakewood, Cuyahoga, Ohio, United States. And unfortunately, she died May 7th, 1974, at the age of 20, up in Washington. Now, she was a loving daughter of Charlie Edward Chuck Parks, Jr. This guy was born 1915 in Winslow, Navajo, Arizona, USA. Now, he passed on June 28th of 86 at the age of 70 in Lafayette, Contra Costa, California, United States. Now, during his life, Charles Edward Parks was an artillery officer in the U.S. Army. He attained the rank of major, so that's pretty badass. And he served just prior to and throughout World War II. So after the war, he was joined in holy matrimony to Kathleen Mage, and together they had a few kids. Kathleen Mage Wilkes Parks was born in 1914 in LaGrange Troop, Georgia, USA. And she passed November 5th, 2009 up in San Diego, California. Now, Roberta had two sisters. There were Susan and Sharon Parks, and Roberta's religion was Christian. So sometime during her early childhood, the family relocated to California, and Roberta went to Alcalanes High School from 1968 to 1972. Now the school is located at 1200 Pleasant Hill Road up in Lafayette, California. So after this, she attended Diablo Valley College from 1972 to 73. This is a public community college established back in, I believe, 1949. And it has like 22,000 students, 300 full-time and 370 part-time instructors. And this place is located at 321 Golf Club Road in Pleasant Hill, California.
Early adulthood, she attended Oregon State University, which is located at 1500 Southwest Jefferson Way. This is one of America's best college towns. Nestled in the heart of Willamette Valley, she attended here from 1973 to 1974. It was here where she was majoring in world religions. This is where you will learn a broad introduction to the world's major religions, their histories and cultures. You'll gain an understanding of different religious traditions, including Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. This degree focuses on the intersection of religion and public life. Different stuff like that. So she wanted to travel and experience new cultures. Now, she had a boyfriend named Christy McPhee, who she was dearly in love with. He had ideas on marriage, but at the time she was a bit doubtful, and this caused a few unnecessary arguments here and there. They would write letters back and forth, with one of her notes to him saying, "I can't wait for your arms around me." Her plans in life were to work with kids or be a physical therapist. But she didn't want to work in an office. She wrote notes that she focused on the clock way too much while working indoors, so the idea of an inside job was completely out of the question for her. On May 6, 1974, around 11 p.m., Roberta Kathleen Parks disappeared from the Oregon State University campus in Corvallis, approximately 250 miles away from Seattle. Kathy was last seen leaving her campus residence alone after telling her friends that she was going to the student union for an ice cream sundae. There are some articles where it says she was going for a coffee, but they both came up, so that's where we're at. Now, the same day that Kathy disappeared, she learned that her father had suffered from a massive heart attack. All this put a great strain on her mother. Doctors warned, do not disclose to him that Kathy was missing. As a result, she was forced to sit in a hospital room while watching her husband, who may have been dying, and yet she was unable to tell him. Now, on May 7, 1974, in Washington, her skull was found on Taylor Mountain, which is about 250 miles from the college she attended. Parks was taken directly to the vicinity where the other bodies were found. At that point, he killed Parks either in his car or had marched her off the road a bit and killed her in a more secluded location. When Kathy's remains were found, it marked almost 1 year of wondering and worry on the part of her family and friends. Her father was in a state of distinct shock to realize that a girl like Kathy could be murdered. I just simply could not bring myself to believe it. The reason was Kathy herself and the type of girl she was. As her father said, if Kathy had been walking across the campus and saw someone with his arm in a sling struggling, she wouldn't have waited for a request to help. The painful and devastating loss of his child forever impacted him for the remaining 12 years of his life. In her room after she was abducted, a piece of paper was located which outlined her ideas of life and her plans for the future as she visualized it at the age of 20. This was written during her Easter vacation in 1974. It was titled Life Goals. It went like this: to be as happy and as good of a person as I can be. To learn about life through living, to better myself as the time passes in any way I can. I want to be at peace with myself and in harmony with others. I want to love and be loved. I want to live in an area I consider beautiful. I want to work at a job with a certain satisfaction and enjoyment. I want to travel, experience lifestyles different from my own, live in different societies, meet different people, of all ages. I want to love the people I find most difficult to love. I would like to have happiness, energy, natural, serenity, and a strong sense of peace and well-being well up inside me. I want to be happy with myself and completely accepting of myself. I want to love and learn through loving and living. I want to live to be 100 years old, but I think I'll be ready for death whenever the time comes for me. In later interviews, when asked why he visited Corvallis, Bundy said it would be an attempt to commit a crime without being linked to other crimes, and thereby again increasing the intensity of the investigation as well as generating additional publicity. When asked by the interviewer, would the girl be sitting at a bar or maybe walking across campus, Bundy said, "She could have been sitting in a library studying. She could have been sitting in a cafeteria studying. She was supposed to be depressed or lonely or something. She might seek out company just to take her mind off a problem, her loneliness or depression. Let's say she was having a snack in the cafeteria, and I just sat next to her and began talking. He represented himself as a student there and would suggest they go somewhere for a bite to eat or to get a drink. Either he was convincing enough or she was depressed enough to accept his invitation. Now, of course, once she got in the car, then he had her in a position where he wanted her, and he could then assume control of the situation. Once he gained her confidence, he would say he forgot something, like his thesis, or something from the typist. He would then drive out to a remote location, and by that point, he would accost her without any fear of attracting attention. He did sexually assault Parks after he felt an onslaught of self-recrimination, and the only goal at that point would have been to kill her and dispose of the body. Her cause of death was by Bundy's bludgeoning, torture, murder, and strangling methods.
Bundy's next victim would be Brenda Carol Ball. She was age 22. So she was born on November 4th, 1951, up in Washington, USA, to her parents Dwayne K. Ball and Rosemary Arnott. She was 5'3" and weighed about 110 pounds. Now her father, Dwayne, was born April 12th, 1930, and he passed August 13th, 1988, at the age of 58, up in Pierce County, Washington, and he was cremated. Now her mother, Rosemary, was born September 14th, 1930, up in Stearns County, Minnesota, USA. She passed in 2022 at the age of 91, and she was also cremated. Now the couple's relationship didn't really pan out. Brenda's mother ended up getting remarried to a man named Donald Arnaud, and this is on March 9th of 1974. So Brenda went missing almost less than a month after Parks. So at this time, Ball had recently dropped out of college. Now, she was known to her friends as a free spirit who often went out, partied. She couch surfed here and there, like she would stay at different friends' houses and stuff. And she also hitchhiked to various places. Now, like many young women, like back then, like hitchhiking was a big deal, right? Like, it was dangerous, but they did it anyway to get to where they were going. Now, the carefree 22-year-old had been looking forward to the summer of 1974. Now, all these missing girls were going missing at a rate about one a month. Now, on the evening of May 31st, 1974, Brenda Ball went to the Flame Tavern. This is located at 12803 Ambom Boulevard up in Burien. Now, Burien's a city that lies to the south of Seattle. It's pretty close to the Seahurst Park and the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. So it's like a distance of a 9-minute drive from the Tacoma Airport and a 6-minute drive from the park. So this place here is like a pretty happening spot. It was a working class dive bar, as they called it. Now, in more recent years, the property has housed like restaurants like the fucking Fiesta Del Mar and the El Baron Arroyo. Now, the term working class dive bar kind of means for like a small, inexpensive drinking establishment. So this place caters to like local working class clientele, and it's characterized as like a seedy atmosphere. Like the place has like simple deck or fucking dim lighting, outdated furniture, shit like that. Limited bar food like onion rings, fries, burgers, stuff like that. So the term dive actually means like kinda shabby. So this is the shithole that she ended up at. Oh, this whole place here, I didn't mention that it was a topless bar. So, tons of boobs on the go, right? So, this had a sign outside that advertised dancing nightly. Now, anyways, the tavern was considered a rough spot, like I said here, and during the 70s, she was seen arriving alone, and she watched the band play, and then she stayed until the tavern closed. Now, this bar is also known for like wicked fistfights too. Like they'd always break out in the parking lot afterwards, right? People would be fucking drunk, punch people in the face. And they'd also have like just different bands there and stuff. There was a band called Child Jam that played there. They performed there back in the 70s. And going forward, I believe in 2007, the building was sold for like 990,000. So just some facts. And I also have some more facts because I'm fucking ADD. So the western side of the bar, this part was the El Baron Rojo, which is now permanently closed. Now, I'm gonna go off topic for a sec. Its owner, Sonia Olvera Jimenez. So she was arrested for murdering a man who was renting a room in her house. Now, back in March of 2020, his body was found in the basement. Now, the man died from a gunshot wound to the head, and the deputies found a 45 caliber shell casing near his body. So, shit happens though, right? Now, speaking of shit, my podcast. Joking. So, also last fact, I swear to God. So, sometime during the 2000s, this fucking bar was called the MVP Sports Bar. So, there was a man here that was shot dead with an AK-47 assault rifle too. So, more you know. So, there were a couple witnesses that talked about this here too. And they weren't mistaken. Like, this would kind of square up with Bundy's MO, right? Because he often faked injuries when he was on the prowl for a new victim. Now, by this time, all of America had kind of known there was a dude out there who faked injuries and smashed them in the head from behind. And poof, they were fucking gone. Now, police kind of took everything with a grain of salt, right? They were trying to wonder why all these people were going missing. But Brenda Ball, I believe she was like 22, so she was a little bit older than the other women that Bundy had abducted. But I mean, even though they were in different towns and everything here, each of these fucking abductions were consistent with similar reports given to police on the other missing girls. So the bar closed up at the 2 a.m. mark. Now, upon closing, she'd asked one of her friends to give her a ride home. However, the friend in question declined because they were driving in the opposite direction. And there were some details that I found that she'd either asked her friend or that she asked one of the band members here, one of the musicians, to give her a ride home. But whoever she asked, they were unable to help her. And this was the last time anyone would see her, is when this tavern closed up. And this was her last known location. So sometime later, her roommates noticed that none of her clothes had been taken with her. So obviously, they started to grow concerned. They decided to contact her bank to see if there was any activity on her account. That wouldn't fly these days. So the bank told them that there was no recent activity. So it was here when they decided to call her parents. Now her mother, Rosemary, lived up in Kent. She filed a missing persons report on June 17th. But alas, this didn't really hit the papers until 2 months after her disappearance. And maybe this was just because it took police a little bit to connect the dots between the other missing girls. Like I said, like Ball was like slightly older and whatnot, right? And she also wasn't a co-ed because she dropped out of school. So shortly after she went missing, she was taking classes in Highline Community College. So before college, this was in 1970, Ball graduated from Mount Rainier High School up in Des Moines, Washington. But yeah, she ended up dropping out, I believe, 2 weeks before she vanished. Now, she also had been living with two roommates in a 5-bedroom house in Normandy Park. This is a city in Kings County, Washington. Now, her friends told police that she was happy with her decision to drop out of college. It could be due to stress or what have you, right? So, with her being unemployed and all that, this is a time for her to party. And her friends did make mention that she began to party quite a lot. So on the night she disappeared, she told them that she was going to hitch a ride to camp to see some other friends at Sun Lake's Dry Falls State Park. This is up in the eastern part of Washington State, and this was going to be for the upcoming Memorial Day weekend. This is a weekend the nation kind of mourns like and honors its deceased servicemen and women. Now, it's a little known fact. On June 28, 1968, Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, which moved 4 holidays, which included Memorial Day, from their traditional dates to a specified Monday in order to create a convenient 3-day weekend. So that's awesome. Now, the change moved Memorial Day from its traditional May 30th date to the last Monday in May, and the law took effect, I believe, at the federal level in 1971. So the park that she was going to, mind you, was established in 1933, and this is a spot that had like 90 unsheltered picnic tables. There's 96 standard campsites and 41 full hookup sites for like RVs and shit. So you can go paddle boarding here, hiking, catch trout at Dry Falls Lake, etc. Now back to it. Her disappearance didn't get noticed right away because of her adventurous nature. So she would come and go as she pleased, sometimes for days at a time without telling anybody, and then she'd be back, right? So nobody kind of took this out of the ordinary. Also, when it was reported, former King County Detective Bob Keppel, he claimed that her disappearance didn't have anything in common with the other missing women, and because of this fuck up, law enforcement didn't release any information about her case to the media till August 7th, 1974. Now, there was an article that I found about her disappearance. Now, this was published by The Olympian on August 7th, 1974. So it made mention that the only possible connection between Ball and the others was her physical description. So later on, the Sunday News had published this article about 1 month after Brenda's case became public. And it did not mention nor feature her picture among the missing, which obviously I think is a total crock of shit. What do you think?
I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and especially for like everybody going missing back then, right? Like it all, like everybody should have looked at that, right? But
Well, you would think, but I mean, I guess to look back on it, knowing everything we know now, it's easier to connect.
and also, it's a little known fact, the distance between the Flame Tavern and Bundy's house was approximately 15 miles. Now, if he still had access to the rooming house or whatever he was staying at, he would have been able to fucking come and go as he pleased, right? But I
Yeah.
believe, even at that time, I believe he was with his girlfriend Liz, but he was always coming and going out of there too, right? Nothing she could fucking do to stop him.
Now, some say she hopped in with a brown-haired man. Others say that she hitchhiked home. But the car thing was actually backed up by an employee at the Flame Tavern, as he came forward to the police. He said they saw Ball in the parking lot talking to an unidentified, good-looking, brown-haired young man with his arm in a sling. But we're not sure if this was directly after she went missing or sometime later. If the sling story came up directly after, this was already known by police and she would have been included in the other missing women. Now, she was seen wearing blue jeans, a turtleneck-type top with long sleeves, a shirt-style jacket, and brown clog-like wedge heel shoes. She had dark eyes and brown hair that she wore long and parted down the middle. Now, that night in question, Bundy talked about Ball in later interviews. He said that the killer most likely stumbled upon Brenda, who was looking for a ride home from the bar, and after picking her up, the two got chummy, and they kept up small talk. This was an attempt to help keep her distracted and unafraid. He asked if she wanted to go to a party back at his place, and she accepted. But when they arrived, there was no gathering, and then the killer concocted a story about why it was just the two of them. At first, Ball was hesitant on going in, obviously, as she was expecting this huge party and they rolled up to a house with all the lights off. However, she did go inside with him. So he went on to say that they continued drinking until she probably drank too much, and the two had consensual sex. Then she dozed off, and he strangled her in her sleep. But all of this was said by Bundy in a later interview. He didn't say that he directly did this. It was all him speaking in the third person and stuff. So he went on to say that this is probably how the killer would have done it. He did it this way and that. But it was too ballsy for Bundy. I mean, it was late. He was always pretty impulsive and he attacked rather quickly. So I think he just resorted to taking her up Taylor Mountain. There's a whole lot of inconsistencies. Even in later interviews, Bundy's ex-girlfriend remembers him giving her some crazy story about having car troubles the day of her daughter's baptism, and he was a couple hours late. And the night before, he took the family out for pizza, and he was just really eager to leave. So he took them out to a Pizza and Pipes restaurant, and that was the same night that Ball went missing. So he dipped out early to fulfill his urges, and he was late the next day because he was disposing her body. Now, her remains were later found up on Taylor Mountain. Those forestry students that we mentioned spotted her skull lying among damp, moss-covered trees. Now, Ball's skull had a large fracture in the back of it when it was found on the mountain, and the King County medical examiner determined that she was missing one of her temporal bones, suggesting that her assailant may have struck her in the head with a blunt object, like a crowbar that we know Ted Bundy is used to having and using. So, if the killer strangled her to death, why would she have a large part of the right side of her skull missing? The skull contained a pattern of silver fillings that were familiar to Dr. Robert Keppel. He had memorized the dental work detailed on the charts, and they easily recognized the jawless expression of Brenda Carroll Ball. An Associated News article regarding Bundy's execution. Rosemary Arnott, mother of 22-year-old Brenda Ball, who disappeared outside of the tavern in '74, said Bundy's death will be a relief only in the knowledge that he will never be able to kill again. She was Bundy's 5th confirmed murder victim. Rhonda Louise Burse was another woman who went missing from this bar as well, not Ted Bundy related. Totally a separate incident. This was on August 8th of 1977. She was a topless dancer who had just finished her shift at the Flame. She got into some dude's vehicle and was never seen again.
So the next victim was 10 days after Mrs. Ball. This victim was Georgianne Hawkins. So this one here would get a little bit more attention as she was very popular and her absence didn't go unnoticed. She disappeared on Tuesday, June 11th, 1974. She was born on August 20th, 1955 in Sumner, Washington. Now, she was an American college student who disappeared from an alley behind her sorority house at the University of Washington up in Seattle. Now, she was the second of two daughters, born to Warren B. Hawkins and his wife Edie Hawkins. Warren, her father, was born November 1st, 1920 up in Vancouver, Clark County, Washington, USA. And her younger sister, she was Patty Hawkins. She's now known as Schultz because she got married. Now, the two sisters were raised in like an upper middle class neighborhood. This is up in Sumner, Washington. Hawkins was reported to be very spirited, vivacious, and an outgoing individual. Now, her mother Edith later described her daughter as a wiggle worm. Now, this is one who's unable to sit still and stuff, right? She also had a very talkative nature about her. And this all was recalled in a 2014 Green Valley News article. Now, because of her fidgety and vibrant personality, this kind of dolled her character up a little bit, that all of her peers were just instantly drawn to her, like everybody loved being around her type thing. So because of this nature, her mother had nicknamed her the Pied Piper. Now, just like the German fairy tale or whatever, because she could get people to follow her with her vibrant personality. And there were a lot of close friends that would just call her George, right? They nicknamed her that as well. Now, her elementary teachers would always give her good notes on her report card. She was a very smart girl. She paid attention during her schooling, and she always got good marks. So growing up, she wasn't like the kind of person who stuck with one group or one kind of clique. She had friends like among everybody here, friends that were older, friends that were younger, just friends of all ages or what have you, right? She was a very self-confident little girl. She wasn't vain, she wasn't arrogant, and she wasn't snooty. And her mother recalls like maybe that's why kids liked her so much, right? And at one stage in her childhood, Hawkins had had a brief bout with Osgood-Schlatter disease, which is like a few small bumps visible just below her kneecap. It's kind of like a painful inflammation. So this is a common knee issue in growing adolescents that causes inflammation or swelling in the shin bone. It's caused by either too much stress on the tendons or muscles that are supported by the knee. Now this can also happen if there's like a lot of activities that include like a lot of jumping, a lot of running, or like a bunch of sports activities or what have you. Now after a while, it actually went away and never came back, so that's awesome. But even despite this, she became a star athlete. She swam competitively throughout her grade school, and she won numerous AAU swimming medals. AAU meaning Amateur Athletic Union. And these medals that were given are awarded for like first, second, and third place. Gold, silver, and bronze. And back in those days, there was like no fucking participation awards back in those days and everything. So you win, you lose, you lose.
Yeah.
Now, as she began to mature, her looks kind of blossomed too. She had fair skin, charming brown eyes, long silky brown hair, and a beautiful shaped face. And she also had a great interest in cheerleading, like I mentioned. And she later transitioned to a top cheerleader as a teenager, and she became a member of the Lakes High cheerleading squad for 4 consecutive years. That's actually pretty impressive. Now, besides the cheerleading, Hawkins was an honor student. She maintained straight A's throughout her school years. She was a graduate of Lakes High School in Lakewood, Washington. That was class of 73. So school is located at 10320 Far West Drive, Southwest, Lakewood. Now, it's one of the 2 major high schools in the Clover Park School District, and they educate the 9th through 12th grades. Now, before hitting up college, George's sister was attending a college a little bit away from their hometown. So when George announced her plans to attend college, her mother had convinced her to enroll in the University of Washington in Seattle. And this was relatively close to the home. This was just so the family could go visit her and she could come visit them, just make things a little bit easier. Now, her sister Patty had attended Central Washington University, which was several hours away. It was actually the same school that Susan Rancourt had attended. Now, she returned to her parents' home on the occasional weekends, and for college, George's parents actually paid for her tuition, her college books, they paid for her room and her board, but Georgianne ended up paying for everything else herself. She worked right through that whole summer just to help pay for stuff. Now, while here, she joined the Kappa Alpha Theta sorority. This sisterhood sorority that's built upon like support, love, and authenticity. So, good for them. And it was here that she decided to major in either broadcast journalism, reporting, or she was deciding on becoming a TV news anchor. So all this was up in the air, right? You still had time to figure things out.
Yeah.
But, she was undecided. But she was working towards her goal, right? Now, during her senior year in 1972 and 73, she was named a princess to the royal court of the annual Washington Daffodil Festival. So this whole Daffodil Festival thing originated back in 1934 as a celebration of the agriculture industry. This is up in Puyallup and Sumner area. Now, the Daffodil Parade then became this whole annual event, right? This is where the community gathered, and the daffodil was exalted as its symbol. So the celebration, was fucking huge. It ended up growing, and then this would make its way through 4 Pierce County cities in a whole single day. Now, as Daffodil Princess, Hawkins traveled around the state of Washington with other court princesses, regularly being featured in newspapers, attending concerts, meeting kids, riding around in parades, signing autographs at charity events and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool how she got to represent herself.
Yeah.
Oh, big deal, eh?
It's exciting. I bet her mom was so proud of her.
Oh, guaranteed. And she took tons of photos, looking up stuff and everything. You see all these photos of her in school and everything. They were definitely wicked proud of her. And there was another time here. This was a highlight. So this was the spring of '73. She actually made a speech addressing lawmakers at the Washington State legislation. And in her spare time, she enjoyed the college nightlife, hanging out with her friends and all that. Georgianne last saw her mother in the month of May in 1974. She actually came home for a few days to honor Mother's Day. Her mother recalls that after she left to return for school, she had sent flowers back to her for Mother's Day. So that's awesome. Now, Georgianne was about a month away from finishing her first year at college. Her plans afterwards were to spend the summer of '74 working at the Pierce County in Tacoma. And this was so she could support herself during her second year of school. And this whole thing was all set in stone, too. This was set to commence on Monday, June 17th. Now, while she was in college, she found love with a Beta Theta Pi fraternity brother named Marvin Gellety, and the two ended up going steady. So let's fast forward to the night in question. Earlier on the day, so June 10th, 1974, Hawkins called her mother to tell her she was going to study as hard as she possibly could for the next few days, as she had a Spanish final, and she didn't want to retake this. So Hawkins went with a sorority sister to a party on campus, and then the two drank a few mixed drinks. She didn't stay too long, though, because she was going to go study for this Spanish final. Now, she earlier expressed her worry and everything, right? But she didn't stay at the party too long. She was going to go back and study for her upcoming Spanish final, right? It's not that she was struggling or anything with this. She just wanted to fucking grind and go ahead and pass, right? Now, before she left the party, she told her sorority sister that she was going to go to the Beta Theta Pi house to say goodnight to her boyfriend and pick up some Spanish notes from him. And while she was an ordinarily cautious person, the area along the sorority houses had become very familiar to her, right? It was like you walk back and forth a million times type thing, right?
I guess as you do those things so often, you lose that concern.
Yeah. Now the whole alley behind the house was brightly lit, right? It had street lights approximately every 10 feet. Now there were generally people around the area that she knew and stuff. And on a warm night, this was June 10th, most students were still awake. They were cramming for their finals, and this had been well past midnight now. So the frat house of her boyfriend was about 6 houses down from her sorority house. This is a total distance of approximately 350 feet. So Hawkins arrived at her boyfriend's house approximately 12:30. This is now June 11th, early hours in the morning, right? So she remained in his company for about a half an hour. So after she retrieved the Spanish notes from her boyfriend, Hawkins exited the fraternity house for a short walk back to her sorority. This was Kappa Alpha Theta. One of the betas here, this dude was Dwayne Covey. He heard the back door slam shut, so he stuck his head out the window, and he seen her going. He goes, "Hey George, what's happening?" Right? So they talked for approximately 2 minutes. Hawkins mentioned her upcoming Spanish exam, so she continued walking back to her residence. She jokingly shouted, "Adios." So this is the whole Spanish thing, right? She had a sense of humor, obviously.
Yeah.
But Spanish was like a subject that she had a little bit of a struggle in, but was overcoming this obstacle. Obviously, with fucking pure grace and determination, right? She had her notes. She wasn't that drunk. Just a well fucking respected person, man. And unfortunately, she was abducted from an alley behind her sorority house, and she was fucking murdered. Now, her death came as a shock, because it fucking shook the community, right? And obviously, we know who did this. It was fucking Bundy. Now, Georgianne thought nothing of this short walk, like I said, right? She took this fucking hundreds of times before. Well-lit area, busy area. But obviously, Bundy seized this opportunity, and he abducted her. Now, a little known fact here, too, that he would actually park up in a parking lot around here. He would actually watch that whole fucking sorority house that she was at, too. So he was fucking gonna nab somebody from there. Now, her sorority sisters knew something wasn't right. She was typically reliable and everything, right? And she didn't arrive home. So 2 hours later, they called up her boyfriend. She said that she left at about 1 a.m. Now, after they heard this, they woke up the house mother there. And then they waited for her to come home. This was morning time by now. And she didn't come home. And she didn't arrive. So they ended up calling Seattle police. And with all the disappearances that were going on, it didn't take the cops long to get there. So they went around questioning all the students, anyone, and everyone. Now, one of the house mothers told them that she was awoken that night because she heard this wicked high-pitched scream, thinking that it was students joking around or whatever, right? People were out drinking and shit. She went back to sleep. So what happened here was Bundy approached Georgianne. He pretended to have some trouble with his briefcase because he was wearing this fucking fake cast. So he was having issues. Now he would drop it and fumble around and shit. And along came Georgianne. Obviously, she was super trusting. He knew this because he's watched her before, right? And he was just scoping things out a few days prior and everything. Figure out her movements and shit. or see whoever she was with and watch them too, right? Because he would get an idea of what he would have to deal with. So she walked with him back to his vehicle, his shitty fucking Volkswagen Bug. And as she bent over to put the briefcase in his vehicle, Ted grabbed the crowbar that he had propped up against his car, or some say it was placed inside a fucking wheel well. Could have been, that you wouldn't be able to see it propped up against the car. If he had it up under, he could just grab it and wham! And eventually he knocked her out with it, right? Pretty quick and pretty fucking hard. And then he placed her in his passenger seat. Now, this was out of turn for him. As Bundy was driving, Georgianne had regained consciousness. And this fucking startled him, right? Because this is something that never happened before. And she was in this, wicked, confused state. She asked Bundy if he was there to help her study for her fucking Spanish exam. That's what she had in her mind. She was so focused on that. She was just thinking of that so much, right? That's the first thing she mentioned. But Bundy was like, what the fuck? He ended up knocking her out again, rather quickly. He pulled over to the side of the road. It was up in near Lake Sammamish State Park. And he strangled her using a piece of rope. So from where he abducted her, this is at the college, up to Lake Sammamish, this was a 23-minute drive, and the whole distance was 18 miles. So, after his arrest and everything, right, he kind of gave police bits and pieces of the story, right? We'll never know the whole fucking truth, because Bundy's a fucking maniac. But he claimed later on that part of her remains included those that found, a few others. This was at the Issaquah dump site. And this was a new dump site that he had started to use, because Taylor Mountain was just fucking way too many bodies up there, body parts, everything. So this here was a 13-minute drive from Lake Sammamish, so distance is 6 miles. It was here where he would start disposing of more victims over time. Now, the day after her murder, Bundy had returned a check on Georgianne's body, because he loved going back up to see his victims' bodies, right? He was fucking drawn to this shit. He would get off, on this whole fucking feeling of power over them, right? He would also have sex with their bodies. This is known as necrophilia. Now, the whole thing here, it's not overly clear that, if he took the victims straight to the gravesite out in the wilderness, or if he chose to, drive around with them, right? So they'd be dead and he'd be just fucking driving around. But either way, he spent a lot of time with his victims. So necrophilia gave Ted power over his victims. Ugh. And then, this could have been his answer to never wanting to feel fearful or feel rejected or anything like that, right? Ted knew he wanted to achieve intimacy, and he didn't give a fuck if she was unconscious, conscious, what have you. Nothing fucking stood in his way, right? So this whole thing is a paraphilia characterized by a sexual attraction to dead bodies, or a desire to engage in sexual acts with corpses. And while not all serial killers exhibit necrophilia behavior, it is a common feature among some of the most fucking notorious offenders. There's Bundy, there's fucking a few others and everything. Now, he admitted to engaging in necrophilia acts with some of his victims after he had killed them. So this behavior is consistent with the profile of a sexual sadist who may derive pleasure from inflicting pain or suffering on their victims, both before and after death. He's like, oh, I can still do all these terrible things to you and you're dead. Fuck this guy. Now, the exact reason why someone may develop a sexual interest in dead bodies is not fully understood, to be honest. Some researchers have suggested that necrophilia may be linked to a history of childhood abuse or trauma or whatnot. But, Bundy had a fucking awesome childhood, right? never out of the norm. And we'll never know that either. While others have proposed that it may be related to like something underlying. Now, it is important to note that not all individuals who engage in necrophilia behavior are violent criminals or serial killers. Some are just fucking weird. Now, sometime after he discovered one of her shoes was actually missing at this point, he fucking panicked. So he immediately began to worry that it had fallen off in the parking lot, like where he fucking abducted her with his Volkswagen and whatnot, right? So he was like, oh shit, somebody might remember seeing his car parked in the area. So he was just wicked worried that people were going to try to piece this shit together. Now, if something of hers was found in the parking lot, they could ID his car, what have you, bring up those encounters and shit, like I said. Now, Ted went back home. So instead of taking his Volkswagen with him, he ended up taking his pedal bike, like a little douchebag, and he drove up there. He wanted to see if he forgot anything, and taking his bike, he would actually fit in easier with the college people, right? Because students always had bikes and shit. He could just bike up and be like, oh, shit, what's happening here, right? Be all oblivious and shit. So upon arriving, law enforcement had taped off the alley. And he was like, oh, shit. So they searched that way for any evidence, right? But the parking lot where Bundy had abducted Georgianne was fucking untouched. So students and news crews started to gather around what they call Greek Row. So because of this little oversight, he was able to return roughly around 5 p.m., retrieve the missing shoe, as well as both of Georgianne's earrings, and he fucking dipped out. Now, Bundy later claimed that he returned to Hawkins' body again on June 14th, and it was here where he made the decision to cut off her head. So police later on, everything, right, because he was all arrested and everything for this, they caught him for this. Police eventually found this dump site. Forensic experts found a femur that they strongly thought to be Hawkins, but forensic experts considered it like impossible to identify. It had also been said that Bundy himself admitted that one of her femur bones discovered at the Issaquah dump site was Georgianne's, but this whole statement hasn't been confirmed. Hawkins was last seen wearing navy blue cotton bell-bottom pants, which had one button and were missing three, the waistline of which had been slightly reduced with a safety pin. She was also wearing a white backless t-shirt, a sheer red, white, and blue top, and white open-toed wedge sandals. Hawkins also had 2 rings on her left middle finger, a rectangular black onyx ring with a small diamond in its center in yellow gold. On her right ring finger, a cultured pearl ring with a slender band in a Tiffany setting. And in her 18 years of life, obviously, she touched the hearts of like so many people, right? She went many places. She achieved a lot of fucking accomplishments. Now, Georgianne's friends held a memorial for her at the alma mater Lakes High School. Warren and Edie Hawkins did not attend. And over the years, many newspapers and magazines had reached out to the Hawkins family for interviews about their daughter. They turned them all fucking down. Aside from a single sentence Edie gave to the Associated Press after Bundy was executed, saying, I've never, ever, ever dwelt on how she died. I didn't want to know how she died. She didn't like the idea of anyone making money off the death of her daughter. Rightfully so. Although Hawkins is presumed dead, she's still officially listed as a missing person, and no public records indicate that she had been declared legally dead. Now, upon his later, death row confessions and shit, Bundy claimed that he decapitated Hawkins and buried her head 25 to 50 yards from the rest of her body. Now, this was roughly 10 yards on the roadside on a rocky hillside. Now, when police later asked him, about the drive after the abduction, Bundy did mention the whole Spanish test thing to him, He said to them, she thought I had taken her to help her tutor her for a Spanish test. And here's what Bunny had to say about that. He said, it was kind of odd, an odd thing to say. And fucking Bundy trying to go on saying people are saying weird things. Fuck off. Now, Bundy's confession had never been confirmed in Hawkins' case, and fortunately remains open to this day. And lastly, Edie Hawkins, who commented on an article like years later or whatever, right? This was 2014. She said, I haven't thought about forgiving him. How could you forgive somebody who hurts your child? I'm not that gracious of an individual. And with that, folks, I think we'll call this a night here. I'm going to pick it back up tomorrow. And this will go into the Lake Sammamish abductions there, because he went up there, busy spot, didn't give a fuck, and he abducted 2 girls. So yeah, pretty ballsy. Fucking Bundy. Yeah, and just, this would kind of like crank up the whole thing too. Like, Ted would just fuck up royally, because he was using his fucking name. He'd be seen by thousands of people that were up the lake at that time, because there's a big shindig. And yeah, we'll talk about that. I hope I covered everything up to this point. You know, I did learn a few things I didn't know about this case too, which is cool. I just hope you guys heard something different, right? So if you want to give me a follow on YouTube, give her. Facebook, go ahead. I'll give you updates, what's upcoming and shit. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Twisted Tales, so I fucking love you guys.
Bundy's trail of terror in 1974 led him to young women on Washington College campuses. Among his targets, UW student Georgianne Hawkins. As Hawkins walked in an alley near Greek Row, Bundy walked with crutches, pretending to need her help carrying his briefcase. In an interview with Washington investigators, Bundy described how he hit Hawkins with a crowbar and put her inside his VW Bug. Like many of his victims, Bundy maintained he dismembered and dumped Hawkins somewhere near Issaquah, but she's never been found.
There never was such a person. I still remember Ted Bundy as a 23-year-old, smiling, empathetic, sympathetic young man. The monster Ted who killed, I know, has to go. He is so manipulative. He is such a master at escape that it would be only a matter of time until he did escape again.
Yeah, time and patience. I think that those are 2 good words. You can't hope to drag it out of a guy overnight, okay? And you can't get frustrated if he doesn't give it to you all at once in one piece, because and you have to be content with slowly learning about what kind of person is this. It's not like anybody's going to trick him into talking about it or pressure him into talking about it.
Twisted Tales.